Thank you very much for inviting me. You know, for an Israeli in my age, it's in a way historical event to visit this city, to hear the language around me, remembering the history of my parents and to compare it to the achievements of the State of Israel in one generation, 2 generations. I'm very proud about our achievements, but I cannot forget the history before the establishment of the State of Israel. For me, it was an opportunity, after so many years of dealing with strategy. I think that since I was nominated in the middle of the 80s to be the head of the intelligence in the Northern Command, dealing with Syria and Lebanon, till my job as the National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister, years of dealing with strategy, but I never stopped to sit and to say, okay, what does it mean, strategy? And how we make strategy better in the future, what lessons can we learn? We just did it. We did it, and as practitioner, I didn't think that I have to report to myself how we are making strategy. At the end of the day, no question that it is a unique issue, but I learned that people are using strategy for many areas. For some people, strategy means very complicated. If it's very complicated, it's a strategic issue. For some people, it's description of timetable. It's long range, not tomorrow, it's strategic. For some people, strategic means very, very expensive. You need a big budget, it's strategic. In some areas, it's a technical description, meaning it will be dealt in a very high hierarchy. It's by the Prime Minister, by the Chief of Staff, it's a strategic issue. When it is coming with the strategic weapon system, it means non-conventional. But it might be very simple. Once I asked a CEO of a big Israeli company, what does it mean, strategy for him? And he said, when I have a big investment that I did in the past, and I didn't get any revenues, and I have to justify the investment to my board, I'm calling it strategic investment. It's kind of excuse that I did the investment, but I don't see the benefits yet. It will take time. For me, there are 2 different kinds of strategy. One is about the decision of the decision makers, the politicians, what they want to achieve at the end. What is the goal of all the actions that will be done by the military and the non-military organization? I think that when the highest level of the political echelons dealing with the strategy of the country, they have to define what they have to achieve in the long run with all the issues that they have and with all the tools that they can use, military and non-military. It's kind of a compass for all the organization under the decision makers where they want to go. With the case of Israel, it is very important to remember that the decision of the founders of the State of Israel was very simple. They defined the strategy goal of Israel in a negative way. Israel wants to be, when it is coming to security issues, to be in a position that no threat in the future will threat the existence of the State of Israel. We don't want to live in an area, in a world in which there is a threat to the existence of Israel. And now we came to the second stage, and this is to learn the framework, the details, the situation, whatever is needed to understand what will make impact on the decision-making in the future. At the 21st years of Israel, from 48 to 73, 74, it was clear that the strategy that will be used to implement the strategic goal of the State of Israel will be a military strategy. What strategy? We didn't decide. It was well understood that the only way to achieve what I said as the goal of the security policy of the State of Israel, the strategic policy of the State of Israel, is to build a wall of steel which will stop, contain, and prevent any attempt to destroy Israel. And this is why the investment in the military sphere and the military capabilities of Israel was huge at the first 25 years. It was understood that it is the only way to prevent the enemies of Israel from destroying Israel. And this is why we should invest in that, and particularly in that. That diplomacy is very important, it will not help. The idea was that a strong wall will not let the other side to achieve its goal, to destroy Israel, which was declared, by the way, by the other side leaders day and night. And here there is another meaning to strategy. What is the strategy in which we have to implement in our wars? And remember, we had few. The strategy was defined as a complete victory without having to explain who won the war in all costs. It doesn't matter how many soldiers we will have to sacrifice, we have to achieve a victory on the battlefield. And it was clear that the achievement should be understood by the other side, and this is why it was defined by square kilometers. In any war, we have to transfer the battlefield to the other side of the border, and at the end of the war to control as many square kilometers as possible. And if you look at the wars of Israel, you can see the efforts to transfer the war to the other side and to go into the other side sovereign area and to gain control. In Egypt, it was the whole peninsula, Sinai Peninsula. In the north, it was the Golan Heights. In 67 versus Jordan, it was the West Bank. In Lebanon, in 82, it was reaching Beirut. It was clear. It is not about annihilating the other side capabilities. It was about conquering land to show the other side that in each war he cannot win, he will lose, and slowly to convince him to believe that it cannot be achieved. The other side capability will not do enough to destroy the State of Israel. At the end of the day, that was a very successful strategy. After 5 wars, 48, 56, 67, 70, the attrition war, and 73, the combination of all these wars together made a difference. After the war in 73, the very important leader of the Arab world, maybe the most important leader of the Arab world, Anwar Sadat, understood that Egypt does not have a chance to destroy Israel. And for the benefit and the future of Egypt, it is better to sign an agreement with Israel. And of course, the conditions after the 73 years allowed Kissinger to leverage the situation and to bring it into a real situation on the ground. But the idea that only by giving the other side the understanding that he cannot destroy Israel was the basis of the strategy of Israel in the first 20 years of the existence of the state. There was a piece of information that after the Assad, the President Assad in Syria his father died, and he became the ruler of Syria. He spoke about war against Israel. And Mubarak, then the president of Egypt, told him, you know what, come to visit me. I will tell you what does it mean a war against Israel, and then you decide if you want a war against Israel. And you can see the results. He never took a decision to fight Israel. With Egypt, it was even more intensive. It was 3 wars following one after another. 67, 70, the attrition war, 73. 67, we took the Sinai Peninsula. During the attrition war, we didn't agree to be flexible about any of our demands for retreating from the Sinai Peninsula, and 73 was ended 100 kilometers from Cairo. It was very important because 67, we succeeded to surprise them. They had an excuse why they lost the war. In 73, they succeeded to surprise us. They didn't have any excuse when it was ended 100 kilometers from Cairo. And by the way, less than 40 kilometers from Damascus. So the combination of all these 3 wars led the most important leader probably in the Arab world to say, okay, enough is enough, and I'm signing the agreement. And that was the most important historic change based on the strategy of the wall of steel. They didn't succeed, they understood that they have to negotiate. When we negotiate, you have to compromise. After the signing of the agreement with Egypt, the whole strategy of Israel was changed. Remember, the strategic goal remained the same, to prevent any situation in which Israel's existence will be under threat. But now the strategy was different. It was a combination of diplomacy and military capabilities. The combination between diplomacy and military operations made the whole strategy much more complicated and sophisticated. Because if it's pure military, it's easy. You invest in the military, you build your capabilities, you want to be sure that you have enough, and you're professional enough, and you have what we call qualitative edge, and we won the wars. Here, after the agreement with Egypt, we have to take into consideration not just the military capability, but also all the constraints of diplomacy, because we didn't want to lose the relations with Egypt. And we thought all the time how we can convince other leaders to come to the same conclusion. So we have a combination of both. The war in Lebanon in '82 led in a very peculiar way to an agreement with the Palestinians in '93. But since '93, or since '95 probably, we are fighting against the Palestinians after the agreement. Either it is in Gaza or in the West Bank. So it's a combination of both, a political exchange and a military exchange. We had an agreement with the Jordanians, and since then it is very quiet. We are cooperating in economy and military areas. It's very easy. And we have constant war with the Iranians, 40 years in Lebanon, with Hezbollah, proxy of the Iranians. More than around the same amount of time with the Islamic Jihad and Hamas. 25 years were tried to contain their and to stop their nuclear military project. And in the last 10 years, we are successfully containing their attempt to build independent Iranian military capability in Syria. But against Iran, it cannot be pure military. You need a lot of diplomatic efforts to recruit the Americans to put sanctions, to convince the organization in Vienna, the IEA, to open the files. Whatever is needed, and it is a lot about under-the-radar operations in Iran, in Syria, and other places, but at the same time, very pure military actions in Syria and other places. Once we reached Khartoum, they moved a huge storage of weapon systems from Iran to Sudan, and then they wanted to be sent to Hezbollah and Hamas. And we understand what they are planning, and we had to make an operation near Khartoum in Sudan. So it's a combination since the agreement with the Egyptians, it was a combination of military, diplomatic, and together it was very complicated. In the last 2 years, 3 years, we are in a total different situation, strategically. The goal is the same, to prevent any situation in which Israel's existence will be under threat. The Abraham Accord changed the strategy of the State of Israel. In a way, we can say that the strategic effort of the first 70 years of the existence of Israel, we can see the fruits. We can see the fruits because Muslim countries like Azerbaijan, Albania, Arab countries like Bahrain, UAE, Morocco, joined the Egyptians and the Jordanians. Now we are speaking about grid of anti-air attacks that will be joined by all these countries versus Iran. And all these countries are on the table. We have many countries with which we have cooperation under the table. And what I can say about it is that is under the table is very crowded. And this third period in the history of Israel, ironically, or if you want to call it, in a way, the success of the military side of the strategy moved Israel to a situation in which the diplomatic efforts are as important as the military. I don't know if I spend more nights in the efforts to convince Arab countries to build the relations with Israel than in operations that had been done by the IDF during the 2.5 years in which I was the National Security Advisor. Probably the diplomatic side was, I spent more time in these efforts. Again, under the same strategic directive that Israel should not be in a position that it endanger its existence. But now we understood that the military strategic efforts came to the level in which we have to spend at least the same efforts in the diplomatic side. And in a way, for us, it's a huge success. And we are learning now how to combine the diplomatic success with the military success, something that we didn't have in the past. And we have to define new strategy, which is using both sides of the strategy of the past to combine it together to a new strategy in which we are using the new position of the State of Israel in the Middle East, based on the agreement that we had in the past and the Abraham Accord, which is a new phenomenon for us, and we are learning how to exploit it and what should be changed in the future. But it's clear that we have to adapt a different strategy, and if someone will use the same strategy of the past, he will miss part of the new opportunities that we might have in the new Middle East and the new situation in the Middle East connected to the decision of the Americans to pull out and other issues. But it's in new Middle East, a new strategy should be adopted. I thought if there is, in retrospect, some lessons that I can draw from the strategy that had been used by us. I think that there is one which, for me, it became much more clear than before. The efforts to declare from the beginning what should be achieved at the end, success-oriented, say, okay, if I succeed in all my efforts, in what position I want to be afterwards, this is very important to define. If you have a clear vision, strategic vision of what you want to achieve at the end, it'll be easier to find the tools which allow you to achieve it. All the time, and this is advice that I'm giving to every new cabinet in Israel, whenever you are, the military guys are coming with plans, and as the general said, we as a military cannot live without plans. You have to show what is the connection between the plan and the achievements at the end. If this is something which you don't see how it leads to what you wanted to achieve, don't do it. It's very important to ask one question to every plan presentation. Show me how it is lead to what we define as the goal at the end. If it's not a good plan. It may be a very militarily or wise from other aspects, but if it's not lead to what we defined at the beginning of the strategic goal, thank you very much. We don't want it. Then try to understand the framework of what you have to act in, because it's very important, the situation on the ground, the situation in the world, in our case, the relations with the United States of America, the Middle East, and so on, and then decide what tools you use, how you lead to implementation of the plans that you have in a way which will lead you at the end to the goal that you defined at the beginning. And this is all the time. It should be very dynamic because the situation is changing all the time. Some options cannot work. You have to find new options. But if you have 3 stages in which you know what you want to weigh at the end, you understand the framework, and then you decide what tools you will have, you probably be a good way to achieve it. Implementation at the end should be very flexible. And I think that there is a difference between little countries and big countries. And the example that I like to have is something which is not connected to the Middle East. Think about a huge river like the Mississippi that it's hardly to see the other side. 2 groups are sitting on one side of the river. One is using a big ship, something very big and strong. The other one is very sophisticated, but it's a canoe. It's a very little one, a very little boat. The first one define what they want, where they want to get at the other side of the river. The commander of the ship is saying ahead, full engine ahead, and he can ignore the turbulence in the river, the underwater rock, problems in the water, people in the water, whatever. We will have to define the line and go the whole way in the line. Little countries like us should have how they survive the river. From time to time to raise the head, to see the goal in the other side, but every day you don't ask how you are I am reaching the goal at the end, because you will not finish the trip to the other side. You have to identify every barrier, every problem in the river, and to see how you survive the challenge, and then you move to the next one. This is why there is a difference between strategy of implementation of superpowers and little countries like Israel. We have to think about our ability to survive the voyage to the other side. This is why in Israel we are all the time remember what we have in mind as the goal, but at the same time we are very, very focusing on the problems that we are facing today and tomorrow. And to prevent from problems which are very little today, from being big problems tomorrow and the day after. In the last 10 years, what we are doing every week in Syria is to prevent the Iranians from changing the status quo to build something which will hurt the ability of Israel to defend itself. And every second day we have an operation, it's a very little one. 4 aeroplanes there, a little group of special forces there, because we understood that if we don't do it, we will face the beast of the Iranian capability like we have in Lebanon. We didn't make it in Lebanon. We didn't think about tomorrow. We thought about the end, what we have today in Lebanon, 100,000 rockets and missiles. And in the last 10 years, what we are doing in Syria is to survive the river. We don't let the Iranians to build anything that we can prevent in Syria. By the way, apparently good success for these efforts. So a little country like Israel should be very focusing on the tomorrow morning problem and prevent the other side from building something that will be too big for the state of Israel. At the end, I want to add 4 remarks and then to open it to questions if you want. First, Israel understood from the beginning that we cannot be alone in the international arena. We are a little country, and we have to have someone to work with in the... We don't have NATO. We are not members of NATO. Beginning, by the way, the War of Independence was won by weapon system which came from Czechoslovakia. It was a decision of Stalin to help the new country because he believed that if the Brits will not be in the Middle East, it's better for Russia, for USSR. Then it was France till 67, and from 67 on, from Johnson on, or from Kennedy on, to be more precise, our ally is the United States of America. But at the same time, we made a clear decision. We want to be in a position that Israel will be able to defend itself by itself. We never asked, and I hope that we will never ask in the future, anyone to come to fight for Israel. Money, yes. Technology, yes. Help in the United Nations, yes. Intelligence, for sure. But the decision of the founders of Israel was, it's not a strategic decision, it's more than strategy. It's a principle of our national security. Israel will defend itself by itself. First. Second, it was understood from the beginning that Israel will have to live in an asymmetric situation forever. Israel is 4 times, Austria is 4 times larger than Israel. We are half of Switzerland. We are like New Jersey or Kuwait. 20,000 square kilometers. This is Israel without the West Bank. With the West Bank, it's 26. We're doomed to live in a demographic asymmetry. In Israel, we have 6 and something more million Jews surrounded by 200 million Arabs. Israel is a unique country. There is no any democracy from Gibraltar to the borders of India. So we understood that we're doomed to live in asymmetry. And the decision to overcome the asymmetry was not just compulsory service, which allow us to build the reserve system and the regular army, but also to build something which is very, very hard to build, permanent qualitative edge. And we took many measures to build this qualitative edge. The problem is qualitative edge that we have to run to keep the gap. You cannot stand where you are because the other side is moving all the time. But Israel's efforts to invest in qualitative edge is something that is very, very unique, and it is not easy. It's very hard to achieve. By the way, the combination of the asymmetry and the decision of Israel to defend itself by itself led to invest a lot of money in our military. Before the corona, the investment was 5.6 from the GNP. Huge number. The third remark is about the new world. We understand that in the last few years, the old notion that the military should finish the war, allowing the decision makers to achieve the political achievement, does not exist anymore. There is no international arena in which you can achieve something. The last war in Lebanon in 2006 was ended with a decision of the United Nations 1701. What is the meaning of the decision? Hezbollah does not take even one letter from the decision to implement. And the forces in Lebanon didn't report even one report about weapon systems belongs to Hezbollah in South Lebanon. And they have in South Lebanon more than 40,000 rockets and missiles. So we understood the international community does not exist. It didn't exist for Syria, and it does not exist for Ukraine today. At the end, what will determine the end of the war in Ukraine? The results on the ground. The achievement of Russians on the one side and the Ukrainians on the other side. Not any decision of the United Nations or any other institution. And that put a huge burden on the shoulders of the generals, of the leaders of the military forces. And the dialogue between them and the decision makers is becoming more important, because what will be understood and agreed by them will be the only compass that the military have, and what will be achieved by the military will be the end of the conflict. So it is different from the past, from the days that I was young, when we said we have to do a good war to allow the decision makers to leverage it for a good decision that will be used by Israel. Nothing will be used. At the end, the military results are the results at the end. And the last but not the least remark. All the strategies that Israel, all kind of strategy that Israel decided to use in the past were based on a prerequisite. Israel should be very strong. Without the ability to deter the other side, we will not win anything. We should be in a position that Israel will be strong enough that any war will be ended with the success of the IDF. And even after having all the diplomatic agreement with all the Arab countries, the only real guarantee of those agreements is strong Israel. The stronger Israel will be, more chances that all these agreements will be implemented by the other side. The day that Israel will be judged as by the other side, and it doesn't matter who is the other side, countries with agreement with Israel and countries without agreement with Israel. The day that Israel will be judged or assessed by the other side as a weak state is the end of all the stabilization in the Middle East. All the agreements will vanish in one day. This is why, in spite of all the agreement, Israel is continuing to build its military capability. It's prerequisite for any consolidation of peaceful agreements in the Middle East. Thank you very much, and if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, sir, very much for your brilliant, outstanding presentation. It was of great interest for all of us. I saw one hand raised, so I could admit one very urgent question and would ask the other participants. General AMIDROR will be part of the famous practitioners panel of Professor Schüftan. There will be room and space enough for discussing into depth and length. So I would kindly ask you to spare your questions until then and pose them forward. Please, sir, can you pose your question?
Transfer the question to Professor Schüftan so we can ask him in the panel.
Thank you very much indeed, General, for this presentation. A very provocative question. You said, because of the situation Israel is in, how would you consider the possibility, and that was one of the conditions, that Iran doesn't turn, into a nuclear power by producing the bomb? You undertook certain measures, for example, cyber war, you succeeded, but this time, which decision will you take?
I am very glad for the question. The threat from Iran presents Israel with a new situation. In a way, we have to implement the old strategy of the first 24 years towards Iran today. It means to understand that the only way to deter and to destroy the ability of Iran to be with nuclear military capability is to use military force. I don't see the world. I don't know what does it mean, the world. I don't see the world. I don't see anyone else is doing it. And at the end of the day, although we are in a different situation in the Middle East towards Iran nuclear capacity, we have to use the old tools of the first 25 years and to use our military capability to destroy the nuclear military facilities of Iran. There is no any other alternative.